On behalf of Blison, I, Parag, welcome you all for this webinar. And firstly, I would like to introduce Dr. Savita ma'am, who is the obstetrician and gynecologist and serving for 21 years in the Humanity and Mankind. And she is running her own hospital in Sri Ganganagar. Her skills are, she is exclusive in dealing with the all critical obstetrics cases with the successful outcomes and sharp hand in the process of USG. And she is a member of fetal medicine. She is the secretary of Sri Ganganagar for last 5 years. And she has conducted many CMEs, webinars on the regular basis, as well as the social welfare regarding the health education and checkups. And she has also been awarded by the Giants International Prerna Group. So welcome, Dr. Savita. And I would like to hand over the session to you for the further process.
Thanks for your evidence. I think you should mute all the mic.
Yeah, I'm muting.
Because we're getting some disturbances. A very good evening, admirable Foxians. Our today's refined speaker, Dr. God, our gorgeous panelist, Ganganagar President, Dr. P.K. Sandhu ma'am, Harmangarh President, Dr. Renu Setia ma'am, and Secretary, Dr. Prerna Rathod ma'am, and young dynamic Dr. Sonia Gupta ma'am from Bikaner. Let me introduce briefly our Sri Ganganagar Society President. She completed her graduation from SPMC in 1975. After that, post-graduation from Bikaner in 1979. After that, ma'am joined Faridkot Medical College in Punjab and for 2 years. And after that, she is providing her dedicated services. She is devotionally practicing since 35 years in Sri Ganganagar only. Ma'am is so humble, elegant, inspiring always for us. Ma'am, are you there? Ma'am is not there?
Ma'am's audio is not been there.
Okay, then Dr. Renu Setia ma'am, our next panelist. She is, we all are SPMCN. We have done our graduation, post-graduation from ST Medical College. Ma'am is of 77 batch. At present, she is running on nursing home at Harmangarh Junction, Rajasthan, and she is president of Harmangarh of Gynae. She is dedicatedly doing her services. Next, Prerna Rathod ma'am. She is also running her own nursing home in Harmangarh, and she is secretary of Harmangarh of Gynae Society. Now I should introduce Dr. Sonia. She has done her graduation from SMS Medical College, Jaipur. Then she pursued her MS in Gynae from Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi. She stayed ex-assistant professor in PBM Hospital, SP Medical College, Bikaner. And presently she is working as senior consultant in Jain Medicity, Bikaner as a gynae and sonologist. She's also doing work in the field of infertility management and awarded 2 times for the best paper on menopause by Foxy, Golden Jubilee Swizera in All India Obstetrics and Gynecological Congress. I am proud of you. As we are all multitasking in our field and dealing all gynae obstetric cases aspirantly, Sonia has special interest in fertility, fetal medicine, as well as high-risk obstetrics, and writing her give intro of our distinguished today's guest speaker. I am over to you, Dr. Sonia Gupta. Unmute.
Thanks, Dr. Savita, for your so kind words. As we know, we all are here today to discuss about a new drug that is carbetocin in the management of PPH. Today, we have an eminent figure in the field of gynecology, Dr. Yashodhara Gaur. Ma'am doesn't need an introduction. Still, it's my duty to formally introduce her. Ma'am is presently working as professor in JR Medical College, Gwalior, MP. She is president of MP State Chapter AGOI. She is also vice president, AMPOG and Medical Teachers Association. She holds the post of president of Gwalior Obstetrics Gynae Society during 2019-20. She is faculty of PHFI and master trainer of HIV, contraception, MTP, cervical cancer training programs. She has more than 10 international publications. She has many awards in her credit. Few are Nari J. Kalyani Award, Gwalior Gaurav, Yuva Doctor, Best Surgeon, and Vishisht Chikitsak Award. She is invited as faculty in various state conferences and AICOG, and her special area of interest are fetal medicine and high-risk pregnancy. So thank you once again, ma'am, for being here today. Over to you, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia, Madam Chairperson, for the kind word of introduction for me. I am also thankful to Shri Ganganagar Society, Hanumangarh Society, and I think Bikaner Society for giving me this opportunity to speak in this prestigious platform of yours. I am first time meeting with my colleagues of Rajasthan online. So, Mr. Parag, shall I start sharing my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
And I am also thankful to Dr. Parvinder, Madam. Unfortunately, उनका audio नहीं काम कर रहा है. So am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, carbetocin, as Dr. Sonia has already introduced the subject of today's webinar, carbetocin, a new drug in postpartum hemorrhage. Friends, we all are obstetrician and we are dealing with so many cases of normal delivery and cesarean section, and we all at one time or other time we have encountered cases of the postpartum hemorrhage, and we know that PPH in India, postpartum hemorrhage is still the leading cause of maternal deaths in India, and prevalence in India of PPH is 38%, and it accounts for up to 56% of maternal deaths in India. Still, PPH, in spite of we have done so many, we have done trainings, we have made so many protocols, and techniques are also evolved of devascularization, of ballooning, and so many newer things we are doing, the compression surgeries we are doing. In spite of all these efforts, the incidence of postpartum hemorrhage is still high, that is 38%. So postpartum hemorrhage as such is defined as a cumulative blood loss. There are various definitions for postpartum hemorrhage, and definitions are made so that we can deliver our services accordingly. So that is for the betterment of the services which we provide to our patient. So one of the definition tells us this: if the blood loss is more than 500 ml following vaginal delivery, or more than 1 liter following cesarean section, is considered postpartum hemorrhage. So here the blood loss is kept in center. The next definition says that it is a more practical definition, and in this definition, patient is in center. Any amount of blood loss within 24 hours after birth is evidenced by a rise in pulse rate or fall in the blood pressure. So if some amount of blood loss occurs and patient's pulse rate rises or blood pressure falls, then we will term it as a case of postpartum hemorrhage. It's very important because in cases like preeclampsia, severe preeclampsia, or severe anemia cases, we have seen that in preeclampsia cases, the naturally occurring hypervolemia of the pregnancy, which is very beneficial at the time of the delivery, is absent in preeclampsia cases. So in such patients, and also severe anemia, slight amount of blood loss may result in derangement of the vitals, tachycardia occurs, and fall in blood pressure occurs. So this is a more practical patient-oriented definition. One more definition is there, which tells us that if bleeding occurs within 24 hours of delivery, then it is primary PPH. We all know, we are all senior gynecologists and obstetrician practicing, that primary PPH mainly occurs because of the Either it is because of the atonicity of the uterus, sometimes some trauma which is missed at the time of the after delivery, and sometimes inversion of uterus may be the cause. While secondary PPH, it occurs mainly because of the retained products of conception or infection. So, by and large, every definition is complementary to each other. We cannot deny any definition. Every definition tells us something about the patient and how to manage it. So, these definitions are they support each other. So when we talk of the causes of the postpartum hemorrhage, we know the 4 T's. We all know about 4 T's. These are tone, trauma, tissue, and thrombin. Tone, when the uterus becomes atonic, 70% cases of the postpartum hemorrhage are caused by atonicity of the uterus. So that's a major chunk of the cases of the postpartum hemorrhage where atonicity is the main cause. Then trauma to the genital tract at the time of the delivery, it may be hematomas in the vagina, vulval hematoma or broad ligament hematoma. Sometimes rupture and rarely inversion occurs nowadays. 20% cases of postpartum hemorrhage occurs because of these reasons. Sometimes tissue is retained, some part of the placenta. If we fail to examine the placenta after delivery, the 1 or 2 cotyledon of the placenta, if it is left inside the uterus, or placenta is invasive, it is adherent, it's not coming out, then this may cause postpartum hemorrhage in 10% cases. Coagulopathies to which we all are scared, but fortunately this is our luck that they are very rare, and they are responsible for postpartum hemorrhage in 1% cases only. So the majority of the cases of postpartum hemorrhage are caused by atonicity of the uterus. Now, there always remains some risk factor for postpartum hemorrhage, and risk factors are basically, they alert us. They are the alerting sign that yes, please get alert. This patient may end up in postpartum hemorrhage. To be ready with the with your cart, with your injections, with your assistant. And so these risk factors are like, if a patient is in prolonged labor for more than 18 to 24 hours, she is in labor, she is exhausted and her uterus is also exhausted, and patient may develop postpartum hemorrhage in this case. Gland multipara, patient at each time after delivery, some part of the myometrium is replaced by some fibrous tissue. So on repeated pregnancy, delivery, fibrous tissue component increases in the uterus. So in this patient after delivery, this fibrous tissue fails to contract and patient develops atonic PPH. Now, if a patient is augmented or augmented by oxytocin, then desensitization of the oxytocin receptor may be the cause, and a patient will end up in postpartum hemorrhage. Precipitated labor, many a time patient comes to us in 1 to 2 centimeter and she get delivered within 2 to 3 hours. And the reason may be that maybe she is severely malnourished, maybe she is having some connective tissue, collagen tissue disorder, and there may be some reason which is resulting in postpartum hemorrhage. So if a patient delivers so fast, then we must get alert that this patient may develop atonic postpartum hemorrhage, or in this patient also trauma to the genital tract may also occur because of this precipitate labor. If a patient is having history of postpartum hemorrhage, if history of postpartum hemorrhage is there, always keep in mind that the same factor may work in this pregnancy also. So in this pregnancy also patient may develop postpartum hemorrhage. How can we ask the history of PPH? We can ask by asking the patient how many blood, was there any blood transfused at the time of delivery, and many a times patient tells us very nicely that yes, bleeding was more, that's why I was given 2 or 3 points of the blood, and then I was shifted to the OT, and such type of history patient can give. And if an educated patient, then definitely she will tell us about all these incidents. At the same time, this patient may keep record of her previous history of postpartum hemorrhage. So if we give 1 or 2 minutes extra to this patient by asking history of PPH, we may prepare for the incoming event. Overdistended uterus. Overdistended uterus because of excess of water, that is the polyhydramnios, excess of fetuses, multiple pregnancy, or excess in the weight of the baby, that is macrosomia. All these causes overdistension of the uterus, overstretching of the myometrium, and when many a times we have seen that on cesarean section, uterus become bag-like after delivery of the twins. Uterus become loose bag-like, and it takes some time to contract. So in this patient, we should remain alert. This PPH may occur. Operative delivery and chorioamnionitis are the known factors which can result in postpartum hemorrhage. So WHO has also recognized it and has recommended active management of the third stage of labor. Active management of third stage of labor is has come in the use in last many years, and it's already there in the textbook, and our students who are going through these years, they are all adopting it. But we obstetrician, when we were PG, we have seen that we were giving oxytocin or ergometrin even after delivery of the placenta and when the need arises. Nowadays, active management of third stage of labor, in advance, we give oxytocin, we give uterotonics for prophylaxis of the PPH. So basically, what is active management of third stage of labor? It is a set of procedures. WHO has decided that this set of procedure, every birth attendant, if a midwife, if a staff nurse, or if a obstetrician or senior consultant, any of them, if they are delivering a baby, this set of procedures should be followed. Now, what are these set of procedures? We all know that AMTSL, first of all, immediately after delivery of the baby, we give 10 international units of oxytocin, either intravenously or intramuscularly, depending upon the facility in which patient is delivered. If qualified staff is there, then intravenous oxytocin is preferred. Then we look for the signs of the placental separation. Placental separation, placenta is getting separated inside the uterine cavity, and it is evident by the signs outside. So if there occurs apparent increase in the length of the cord, or if there occurs sudden gush of blood, and when we keep our hand over the abdomen to suprapubic region, uterus become hard. So these all indicate that yes, placenta is separated inside and uterus is contracted. So at this time, we should go for controlled contraction. Now again, controlled contraction has a history. Previously, we were using Bland-Andrews method, in which we push uterus from above, and from below we pull on over the cord. So we were doing all those things which leads to PPH, which leads to inversion of the uterus, but it is not done nowadays. We perform controlled contraction after looking for the signs of placental separation. Now in this controlled contraction, we all are doing, just for revisiting, we keep one hand over the patient's abdomen, and we push the uterus upward and posteriorly, backward direction, and at the same time, by the clamp which is applied over the cord, we pull the placenta from below. So in this way, we separate the placenta. And if after this, if bleeding occurs, then bimanual compression is advised. Bimanual compression can be given per abdominally, or we can place one hand inside in the posterior fornix, and the other hand over the pubic symphysis, over the abdomen. We compress the uterus in between both our hands. So bimanual compression is advisable. So this is the set of procedures which So the most important procedure of most important component of this AMTSL is giving of uterotonic drug, and it is the most important in the AMTSL, and it reduces the incidence of postpartum hemorrhage by 50%. Uterotonic drug which we give, it reduces incidence of PPH by 50%. Now, after performing AMTSL, we have to see the vital parameters of the patient, that is pulse rate, even if we are delivering and we are looking for the trauma to the genital tract, one of our assistants should check for the pulse rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, systolic blood pressure. If there is a decrease in the blood pressure, systolic blood pressure of less than 80 millimeter of mercury, it is associated with tachycardia and patient's mental status is altered, then we must think that yes, already patient has had a postpartum hemorrhage or blood loss of 1500 ml. One more fact, mathematical fact is there, that is the rule of 30. If patient's blood pressure, systolic blood pressure falls for 30 millimeter of mercury, pulse rate increases by 30 beat per minute, and urine output less than 30 ml per hour, then this says that patient has lost her 30% of the whole blood volume. So it's a very alerting sign for us. Then one more fact is there, that is shock index. Shock index is calculated by pulse rate divided by systolic blood pressure. And if it comes more than 1, it indicates that patient is in shock. Suppose a patient is having a pulse rate of 140 and her systolic 140 and her systolic blood pressure is 70. So when we divide, we get 2. The shock index comes 2. So it is more than 1 and patient is in shock. So whenever our assistant or our nursing staff reports us the pulse rate and systolic blood pressure, this is how we can calculate the shock index and we can perceive the severity of the condition. Many a times blood loss occurs, we subjective calculation of blood loss, if we see, most of the time it remains wrong. That's why in those conditions where we are not able to perceive how much blood loss has occurred, then we should apply this rule of 30, shock index, and it's very important to monitor the vitals of the patient. So while we are managing the patient, we are adopting the AMTSL and we are looking for the PPH, hemorrhage card should be kept ready. This is the preparation for managing the patient. In hemorrhage card, we should have, it's a sterile tray basically, and it contains all the instruments which are needed for the genital tract injury if it has occurred for repair, and at the same time it also has cognitive aids for infrequently performed technical procedures such as placement of uterine tamponade balloons. Not each and every patient of our need balloons, not uterine compression sutures. That's why we need to update ourselves day by day by performing these procedures on the simulation, or we can see videos. So time to time updating is very important so that whenever the need arises, we remain ready for performing, for applying uterine compression sutures. And this hemorrhage card should have oxytocin vials, 2 vials of 10 units, oxytocin 10 to 40 units in pre-mixed bags, 15-methyl PGF2 alpha to 50 microgram, and misoprostol. And it should also have the drug which we are discussing today, that is carbetocin 100 microgram. So we can keep all these in our cart ready for whenever the need arises, we can use it immediately. Now, hemorrhage drills are also mentioned. This is all to prepare for the fight in the time of the peace. This is a drill. This is basically a scene is created that if a patient develops postpartum hemorrhage, then how we are going to cooperate as a team, how we are going to manage different things. Because when we manage a patient of PPH, we need at least 5 to 6 because 2 persons are needed for genital tract trauma if the repair is required, and 2 persons are required, 2 nursing staff for giving IV drips, for sending the samples for the blood and taking the vitals, and 1 person for explaining the procedure and whatever is going on with the patient to the attenders, to the family, which is very, very, very important. Now, as far as requiring technical skills are there, technical skills which are needed for managing a case of postpartum are putting of the balloon catheter, balloon tamponade inside the uterus, applying compression sutures, and performing devascularization surgery, And these technical skills, we doctors definitely in time to time go through it. In United Kingdom, the prompt, that is a practical obstetric multi-professional training, which is evidence-based multidisciplinary training, is recognized to improve the outcome, and it has reduced their local litigation claim by 91%. So training workers to improve their knowledge of PPH, it can be achieved by didactic teaching or simulation training. So we can have didactic teaching from time to time for developing skills of PPH, or simulation training can also be adopted. Standardized courses include prompt and MOED, that is the managing obstetric emergencies and trauma, and also advanced life support in obstetrics. Evidence-based memory aids can be taught to facilitate recall of fundamental treatment steps in PPH. Now, what is this? When we put a chart inside the labor room, which is showing
स्लाइड पूछूं, दिख रही है क्या करंट स्लाइड्स आपको?
हाँ,
पूछ लो, प्रिया को नहीं दिख रही.
अच्छा, am I audible? My slides are moving or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Moving, ma'am. It's audible also.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So evidence-based memory aids, the charts which we put in the labor room, actually what they does, they tells us the step protocol, what we have to do. Because if we remain dependent on our memory, there are chances that we may fail something to do. So always keep such charts inside our working place, inside our labor room, which are showing the steps, what we have to, what we should do, what we can do. And this has definitely, it is seen that it has reduced the chances of peripartum hysterectomy in management of the postpartum hemorrhage. And also it's very important, the importance of communication among members of the multidisciplinary team should also be emphasized. Multidisciplinary team for management of PPH will be consisted of consultant, interns, and our postgraduates can be there. One senior anesthetist should be there, and most important is blood bank officer should be there, and if patient goes in shock, then intensivist may also be needed. So multidisciplinary team should be there for managing postpartum hemorrhage cases. If we really want to do something for our patient, then we should have to prepare for it. We should have to take develop these technical skills, keep our hemorrhagic cart ready, and also make a team and which will remain in contact with each other. And in nursing homes, our friends who are working in nursing homes, they should remain in contact with the blood banks from where the blood and components of the bloods are available in time of need. So all this should be done prior to the patient develops PPH, and that will help us in managing this patient. And also support program for patient families and staff is very important. Women and their family, they need timely information. If a woman is having a high risk factor for postpartum hemorrhage, so please explain them prior to delivery that this patient may develop postpartum hemorrhage, she may need blood transfusion. So please call attenders, please keep them ready for giving the blood and component. And at the same time, if patient is having postpartum hemorrhage, then timely information should be given to the patient's attender and family. And at the same time, reassurance may be given that yes, we are doing and chances are good, or whatever we do. Try to explain things, right things to be explained in polite words, and to discuss the incident with the maternity care provider. So these habits and these skills of communication should be adopted by us and our staff, our nursing staff, our working staff. Now, there are certain things about how we will assess the stages of the shock. Stages of the shock can be assessed if blood volume loss is less than 15% and patient's heart rate remains 100, systolic blood pressure remains normal as it was previous previously same, and there is no change. Pulse pressure sometimes may increase, and respiratory rate remains 14 to 20. Patient becomes slightly anxious. At this time, if we expand the intravascular blood volume by 1 to 2 liter crystolite, it may help. This is the stage 0. Stage 1, when 15 to 30% blood is lost, then patient's heart rate will start increasing more than 100. Systolic blood pressure may remain normal at this time, but diastolic blood pressure may drop, and postural drop may be there. Pulse pressure will be low, and the respiratory rate will become 20 to 30. Patient may become anxious again, and we have to evaluate the intravascular volumes expansion again, whether the 2 liter crystolite which we advised was given or not. If not given, then we have to push it and see for the blood and blood arrangement. If patient has lost 30 to 40% of the blood volume, then definitely her heart rate will increase by more than 120, and systolic blood pressure will start falling, pulse pressure will fall, capillary refill time will be more than 3 seconds, respiratory rate 30 to 40. Patient may become confused, and at this time patient need 2 liter crystolite, it was given already. We have to replace the blood loss, and we can give colloid or blood products. As far as the blood PRBC and blood component are concerned, they should be given in 1:1:1 concentrate proportion. The blood volume is lost is more than 40%, and patient's heart rate becomes more than 140, and definitely systolic blood pressure will fall, pulse pressure will fall, capillary refill will be absent, respiratory rate will be more than 35. And patient becomes lethargic. So these are the parameters which tells us that in which stage of shock our patient is, so that we can act timely and manage timely. Now this is the checklist how we will manage these cases. We have seen the stage 0, 1, 2 and 3 stages of the shock. So stage 0, when the blood loss is less than 50%, active management of third stage needs to be done. And at this time, if patient is high risk, then we will send blood for typing and cross matching. And if need arise, we will transfuse. In stage 1, when the blood loss is more than 500 ml vaginal delivery, more than 1 liter in cesarean delivery, but vitals are normal. At this time, we will put 16 or 18 gauge IVSS. We will give 2 liter of crystolite, and catheter will be, and fundal massage will be done. Or if any genital tract is there, it needs to be repaired at this time. And at this time, type and cross match 2 units of PRBCs, and as soon as it comes, we start transfusing. Stage 2, at this stage, more than 1500 ml blood has already been lost. At this stage, we have to put 2 IV 16 and 18 gauge IV lines. Lab tests are sent, and we have to place intrauterine balloon. And selective embolization is it's not a very practical thing in our circumstances. We can very well put intrauterine balloons, and if we are doing cesarean section, we have to look for that whether bleeding from our incision site is occurring, or if there is any broad ligament hematoma is formed. Sometimes inferior epigastric hematoma artery may bleed so much that a hematoma is formed. So we have to look for the reason from where the bleeding is occurring and patient is going in shock. And we have to go for the B-link suture, compression sutures and revascularization surgery at this time. And if blood is available, transfuse it, use and 2 FFP, 2 PRP, it should be given to the patient. If patient's blood loss is more than 40%, then we need many more expert hands, senior gynecologists, anesthetists and intensivists, and central IV line should be started, and family should be explained at each stage about the severity of the condition of the patient. And apart from this, we will proceed for the compression suture and devascularization surgery. If it is not working, then we have to go for internal iliac artery ligation, and hysterectomy can be done if the surgeon is not very much trained or very much comfortable with internal iliac artery ligation. He or she can directly proceed for hysterectomy. So now this is how we have to proceed And for this, we have to remain prepared by developing, again, I am saying by developing technical skills, by updating ourselves, by keeping our instruments and our drugs ready. And that's why, rather than going through all this catastrophe, WHO recommends prevention of catastrophe to happen by managing the third stage of labor very actively for prevention of postpartum hemorrhage. And PPH after cesarean delivery. This one line about the cesarean deliveries. Cesarean deliveries have become an epidemic in our country. There is a record 300% jump in the last decade. The reasons are very different. Sometimes patients themselves, they want a painful, safe delivery, painless safe delivery, and sometimes some unethical practice is also there. So. And we know that in cesarean delivery, even if PPH is not there, about 1 liter blood loss occurs. So the incidence of PPH is high in cesarean deliveries, that is 6.75%, in comparison to the vaginal delivery, where it remains only 2 to 4%. So not only for vaginal deliveries, active management of third stage of labor, we have to focus on cesarean deliveries also for prevention of PPH. It is common practice. We always use active management of third stage of labor in normal vaginal deliveries, and we always give uterotonic during cesarean section as soon as baby get delivered. Our anesthetist start oxytocin 10 unit in the drip. This is the international consensus statement on the use of uterotonic agents during cesarean section, which says that uterotonic agents like oxytocin or carbetocin is recommended for routine administration immediately after delivery of the fetus during cesarean section to prevent PPH. So this is the statement they are giving, but we are already using. Only new thing which is added was the carbetocin. So administration of this uterotonic drug is very essential during cesarean section and as well as after normal vaginal delivery. Now, what uterotonic drugs are available for inducing uterine contractions? This is posterior pituitary hormone and analog, oxytocin and carbetocin. Then ergot alkaloids, that is ergometrin and methyl ergometrin, and prostaglandins, PGF2 alpha, misoprostol, and PGE2. So out of this, the oxytocin and carbetocin is first line agent, while the ergometrin and prostaglandin can be used as second line agent according to Anesthesia 2019 report. Oxytocin is considered a gold standard treatment for prevention of PPH and for treatment of PPH also. So in both the conditions, oxytocin can be used for prophylaxis, for prevention, and as well as for treating the PPH if it is occurring. But oxytocin, some problems, some issues, we can say some problems are there with oxytocin. That is, it's a very short acting drug and its duration, half-life is only 4 to 10 minutes. Duration of action remains for 15 to 20 minutes. That's why we need to transfuse oxytocin for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours or 4 hours as it is needed. It is administered as a continuous IV infusion to attain sustained uterine contraction activity throughout the surgical procedure in immediate postpartum period. And it causes, oxytocin is a drug which induces physiological uterine contraction. It means contraction, then relaxation. That is why it is used for augmentation of the labor. But when we are using it for augmentation of the labor, it occupies all the oxytocin receptors, or it may desensitize the receptors. So if in this patient we use oxytocin in active management of third stage of labor, it may fail to induce uterine contraction. And of course, as far as doses of oxytocin is concerned, there is much variation is there. Some obstetrician, gynecologists are comfortable with using 10 international unit oxytocin, while others are using 20 international unit of oxytocin. So there is no consistency in dosage regime, which results in errors in its administration. And also oxytocin is declared high alert medication by the Institute for Safe Medication Practices. Means if minor error occurs in the administration, it can cause significant harm to the patient. So So need of the hour. We want to prevent PPH from occurring, and we want a good uterotonic, which whose action remains long for longer time. Single dose of administration should be there. It should be devoid of repeated administration, superior efficacy or similar efficacy as that of oxytocin, and there should not be any receptor desensitization, and side effect profile should be superior or at least equal to the oxytocin. So the carbetocin is a drug which is a synthetic analog of human oxytocin with some structural changes is there. These structural changes make it more more heat remain active. Its action remains for more time. What is carbetocin? This drug is added to the WHO essential medicine list of uterotonics for the prevention of excessive bleeding after childbirth. Now, it is the safest and most effective medicines needed in a health system, WHO says. Now, WHO has recommended uterotonics for the prevention of the PPH, and these recommendations include the use of an effective uterotonic for prevention of the PPH during third stage of labor is recommended for all births, which we all know. And to effectively prevent postpartum hemorrhage, one of the following uterotonic can be used, and these uterotonics are oxytocin, carbetocin, misoprostol, ergometrin, methyl ergometrin, oxytocin, and ergometrin fixed dose combination. So the idea of mentioning all this is that the drug for which we are here, we are discussing carbetocin drug, it is already in the recommended drug list of the WHO. The use of oxytocin in the form 10 IU intramuscular IV is recommended for the prevention of PPH for all births. Then the use of carbetocin is also recommended for prevention of PPH for all birth in context where its cost is comparable to other effective uterotonics. Previously, its high cost was an issue. So if cost factor is excluded, then it is recommended for prophylaxis of the postpartum hemorrhage. Then the misoprostol drug can be used in the dose of 400 microgram to 600 microgram per oral, and ergometrin or methyl ergometrin is also indicated, can be used 200 microgram IM or IV is recommended for prevention of PPH, but in context where hypertensive disorders can be safely excluded. So if delivery is occurring in a tertiary care hospital or where we can exclude the hypertensive diseases, there it can be safely used. The use of a fixed dose combination of oxytocin and ergometrin can also be used, but there too one context is there that hypertensive disorders needs to be excluded before its use. Injectable prostaglandins, that is the 15-methyl-PGF2 alpha, is not recommended for prevention of PPH. So carbetocin is a drug which is recommended by WHO as an effective uterotonic in its 2018 guideline. So when we compare carbetocin versus oxytocin, what we get that half-life for carbetocin, that is 40 minutes, is 10 folds higher than oxytocin. It means if we give carbetocin, it will remain active for longer time, and the duration of action of carbetocin is longer than IV and IM oxytocin. It was found that a single IV bolus injection of carbetocin at least is effective as 16 hours of continuous oxytocin infusion. And when we give continuous oxytocin infusion, there always remains risk of antidiuresis. Carbetocin need no repeated administration and no dose variation. Single dose of carbetocin is found to be effective in controlling PPH, unlike oxytocin, where we need different doses and multiple doses. Now, how does carbetocin works? Carbetocin works via the oxytocin receptors, and it causes uterus to contract. And this contraction remains for at least for longer time. This drug has been studied throughout the world, and there are certain clinical studies are there which I want to quote. One is for the management of third stage of labor during vaginal delivery and for prevention of PPH following cesarean deliveries. So this is one of the study which was done, which was published in Archives of Gynecology Obstetrician 2018 August edition. And in this study, intravenous carbetocin versus intravenous oxytocin was studied for preventing postpartum hemorrhage following vaginal delivery. And there was one high risk in high risk singleton pregnancies where one high risk factor for PPH was present. And now in this study, what they found? They studied 174 women, divided them and gave 100 microgram carbetocin IV over 1 minute period and oxytocin 5 minutes slow IV over a 1 minute period. Outcome measures which they have studied were incidence of atonic PPH, postpartum blood loss, additional uterotonic drugs whether it was needed, incidence of postpartum anemia, what was the incidence, and any adverse effect. Now, the result says that incidence of atonic PPH was 0% in carbetocin group, while it was 6.3% in oxytocin group. Postpartum blood loss was less in carbetocin group, and need of additional uterotonic drug was also less in the carbetocin group in comparison to the oxytocin. So similarly, postpartum anemia, when it was seen, the incidence was less, hemoglobin less than 10 gram percent was found in less number of patients in whom carbetocin was used in comparison to oxytocin. So this study says that intravenous carbetocin is more effective than intravenous oxytocin for prevention of atonic PPH in singleton pregnancy with at least one risk factor for PPH. So we can use it for prophylaxis of PPH. Management of third stage of labor during vaginal delivery, one more study, it was published in Bangladesh Journal of Obs and Gynae, and in which efficacy and safety of carbetocin in comparison to oxytocin in active management of third stage of labor following vaginal delivery was studied. It was an open label randomized control trial. In this study, 110 women were studied, included, and they were given 100 microgram carbetocin. One group was given 100 microgram carbetocin, and another group was given 10 international unit of oxytocin intramuscularly. Outcome measures were done, and outcome measures which they have seen were amount of blood loss in 24 hours, primary PPH, massive blood loss, need for additional uterotonic therapy and blood transfusion, and adverse effect. And in the C group, that is carbetocin group, primary PPH, massive blood loss, immediate blood transfusion, and need of additional uterotonic was none, and amount of blood loss was slightly less in comparison to oxytocin group. So they concluded that carbetocin is an effective new drug in the AMTSL, and it can be considered a good alternative to oxytocin in management in prophylaxis of the PPH in vaginal deliveries. Now, they have also, there are studies where this carbetocin was used in cesarean deliveries for prevention of PPH, and this is a study which was published in International Journal of Gynecology Obstetrician 2016. Randomized control trial comparing carbetocin, misoprostol, and oxytocin for prevention of PPH. Now, what they found in this study, 100 microgram carbetocin was used, 10 IU oxytocin was given, and following neonatal delivery, and 20 IU in 500 ml normal saline IV for 4 hours. And misoprostol 400 microgram was given sublingually. Primary outcome which they studied were occurrence of uterine atony and necessitating additional uterotonics. Keep in mind that this is a study which is done in cesarean patients. So the additional uterotonics, blood loss reading between 500 ml to 1000 ml and requirement of blood transfusion, it was all in favor of carbetocin, and no significant difference regarding side effects between oxytocin and carbetocin. Seen side effects are reported high in misoprostol group. Of course, misoprostol may be associated with vomiting and GI side effects, but with oxytocin and carbetocin, no side. Comparatively, there is not much difference was there in side effects. And additional uterotonics were needed less frequently in patient in whom carbetocin was used in comparison to oxytocin. And misoprostol is the drug which needs maximum time the additional uterotonic. So Then this is the study where prevention of PPH following cesarean delivery. One more study is there, which was published in Egyptian Journal of Anesthesia. This is a study which is in which effect of carbetocin and oxytocin on isoflurane induced uterine hypotonia in twin pregnancy patients undergoing cesarean section. So there are two risk factors. One is that patient is going cesarean section is a risk factor for PPH. Second is patient is going for cesarean section for twin pregnancy is a risk factor. And third factor is isoflurane induced uterine hypotonia was there. So what they found, they studied need for additional erythrotonic like methalgin, whether it was needed, what was the amount of blood loss, whether patient needed any additional blood transfusion. So single dose of carbetocin appear effective than oxytocin for several hours of uterine contraction and though preventing PPH in multiple pregnancy patients undergoing elective cesarean section. So we can say that even when there are 2 to 3 factors of PPH are present, in that condition too, this drug has performed well. Then carbetocin was compared with the sublingual misoprostol in this study, and results were found that carbetocin is superior over oxytocin plus misoprostol combination plus misoprostol. And then clinical study where carbetocin versus oxytocin plus argometrin was studied. And conclusion was that the carbetocin is more potent long-acting oxytocin with less need for other additional erythrotonic drugs and less occurrence of uterine atony was there. Then carbetocin was compared with methyl argometrin also. So many studies are done. Carbetocin is a preferable drug in reduction of PPH and more safety in side effects of drug. Then in comparison to the methyl argometrin maleate. Now this is the Cochrane collaboration author's conclusion I have quoted. The Cochrane Library 2012. For women who undergo cesarean section, carbetocin has resulted in a statistically significant reduction in the need for therapeutic erythrotonic compared to oxytocin. It is associated with less blood loss in prevention of PPH for women who have vaginal deliveries and is associated with significantly fewer adverse side effects. So for prophylaxis in vaginal delivery, this statement is there in the Cochrane Library. Then carbetocin, one study is done where it was studied that in patients in whom carbetocin was given in postpartum period, immediate postpartum period, patients were having reduced pain perception and their definitely their quality of life in immediate postpartum was good because those patients were have less pain perception who were given carbetocin. And then one more good study which I want to quote is this one, carbetocin versus oxytocin for prevention of postpartum hemorrhage in patients with severe preeclampsia. This was a double blind randomized controlled trial in which oxytocin and carbetocin were given as erythrotonic in patients of severe preeclampsia. 60 women were studied in this study, and outcome measured were whether any additional erythrotonic was required, what was the difference in hemoglobin levels between these two groups, development of oliguria, hemodynamic status, pressure, mean arterial patient heart rate after administration of the drug. And what they found that carbetocin is an appropriate alternative to oxytocin for prevention of PPH in women with severe preeclampsia. So it can also be used according to this study. It doesn't have a major hemodynamic effect in women with severe preeclampsia, and it uses a lower volume per dose than oxytocin. It can be considered a valid option in management of the third stage of labor in women with hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. Now this was all about the studies which were done. Carbetocin, we have done the comparison of carbetocin and the oxytocin. Now if we compare the carbetocin versus carboprost, we know that carbetocin is the first line management for prophylaxis, and the prostaglandin induced side effects which are there with carboprost are not there with the carbetocin. So that's why it's the first line drug for prevention of PPH. So management of, we can use this drug in management of third stage of labor during vaginal delivery in patients with singleton pregnancy, in patients with high risk pregnancy, and prevention of BPH following cesarean delivery in patients with elective cesarean section, in patients with high risk cesarean section, and in patients with twin pregnancy. And it is found that this drug is superior to oxytocin and other uterotonics in respect to prevention of BPH. Estimated blood loss after delivery, need of additional uterotonic agents was less, decrease in hemoglobin level was less, need of blood transfusion was less required, perception of pain was less, and side effect profile was comparable to the oxytocin. So in India too, champion trial was conducted, and this is a trial in which heat is stable, and this study was conducted by WHO for carbetocin versus oxytocin across 23 centers in 10 countries, including India. And these are the names of these centers in India where this drug was studied. And the results were that carbetocin proved to be non-inferior or equivalent to oxytocin with ease of single dose administration in preventing BPH. So in the end, we can summarize that carbetocin is superior over oxytocin with respect to prevention of BPH, blood loss, prevention of BPH. If it is there, then definitely blood loss is less, and additional uterotonic agent will not be needed, and hemoglobin level will be less fallen, need of blood transfusion will not be there, and patient will be having a less perception of pain because uterus will remain contracted. It will not contract, relax. That's why patient get less pain following delivery and use of carbetocin. And if we compare it with the ergot alkaloids, prevention of BPH, blood loss after delivery, need of other additional uterotonic agents, and need of blood transfusion, better side effect profile was there with the use of the carbetocin. And if carbetocin is superior, basically carbetocin and prostaglandin analogs are two different drugs which are used for one purpose. Which are not used for one purpose. Carbetocin is recommended for prophylaxis, while the carbopost is recommended for therapeutic use, that is the management of the BPH. So this is a second-line agent and need multiple doses, and it is not recommended by WHO for prophylaxis associated with significant increase in vomiting and diarrhea because of the GI side effect. So this is all about today's topic. Thank you. Thanks for patience hearing. Thank you, Savita ji.
Thank you, God, ma'am. You have given detailed study about PPH, and some questions are there, ma'am.
Of course, please ask.
Renu Sethi, ma'am, are you there? Ma'am, can carbetocin can be used for induction of pain? Induction of labor?
Carbetocin is a drug which induces sustained uterine contraction. So when sustained uterine contractions occur, what will happen when the fetus is inside the uterus? Am I audible?
Contraction would be there. It will cause asphyxia of the child, I think.
Asphyxia.
Remain fetal distress and fetal intrauterine death may occur. So this drug is not recommended for antenatal use, intranatal use. It's not recommended for that purpose.
Madam, can we repeat it after some time if it is required?
Madam, in every literature and every study which is done, only single dose administration is advisable, that is 100 microgram, because a drug occupies the oxytocin receptors, of course, and its action is for a long time. That's why second dose administration is not recommended.
And side effects of side effects?
Side effects as such are not much. This drug is contraindicated in certain conditions, like if a woman is having, patient is having convulsions, epileptic patient is there, or if patient is having hepatorenal failure. In these conditions, carbetocin should not be used.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, patient is in severe preeclampsia, and there is some renal failure or patient is going in low renal output, then we can't use this or we can use.
Hepatorenal failure is one of the contraindication. We should not use.
Patients are going in HELLP syndrome. Na? Many of the patients we are dealing now.
In,
So we should not.
in that condition, better not to use.
Okay, prostaglandin then. And ma'am, Parag, can you tell the cost of the injection?
It is a single injection and the costing is 350 rupees. And I would just like to share the screen for the brand, which is the brand name which is available. We are made it available with the brand name as Carbacin.
Okay, okay.
Cost is 350 rupees.
Yeah,
Can we kept it on room temperature or we have to keep it in freeze?
Madam, at present we are recommending to keep it in the temperature between 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, even though we have manufactured as a heat stable and we have applied for the patent also. But right now we are providing the data to government, and once the clearance which we'll receive from government, then we will be removing this condition of maintaining the temperature. Then it will be a heat temperature. So it will take around 2 or 3 months for that.
Can we use this drug for induction of abortions, ma'am, in that condition like we use prostaglandin?
we are using prostaglandin.
Actually, oxytocin is a drug with
For uterine contraction, I think it will not dilate the cervix.
prostaglandin. It causes definitely uterine contraction, and for second trimester of abortion we have used. But for carbitocin, no such recommendation is there. We
Because
cannot.
prostaglandin also causes cervical dilatation. It will not help in cervical dilatation.
It will cause spasmodic uterine contraction, and there is no action is on the is not known yet what it does. Maybe some misuse may occur because misuse may occur with each and every drug in our country, but carbitocin as such is not recommended for induction of abortion also.
Can we Setia ma'am? Unmute yourself, ma'am.
Dr. Prerna, I'm not Setia.
प्रेरणा चलो पहले तेरा क्वेश्चन रख ले
नहीं तू बोल दे चल
हेलो डॉक्टर गॉड, वेरी नाइस प्रेजेंटेशन और बहुत शॉर्ट टाइम में आपने पीपीएच एंड एक्टिव मैनेजमेंट ऑफ लेबर रिवाइज करवा दिया, थैंक यू। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि क्या हम इस कार्बिटोसिन को दूसरे जो हैं ऑक्सीटोसिन या प्रोस्टाग्लैंडिन्स उनके पहले या बाद में यूज कर सकते हैं?
See, this drug is used for prophylactic purpose. Whenever we need repeated tonic, only in condition where PPH is occurring, and this drug is not recommended for therapeutic use. Therapeutic use means PPH is already occurring. Then only we will need extra tonic. Otherwise, there is no need of giving any other tonic. So we can use it for one time prophylaxis, and if patient requires, if PPH is occurring and patient requires more uterotonic, then we have to shift for oxytocin or for prostaglandin and ethylorgometrin. Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Madam,
Thank
can
you,
we
ma'am.
give it just before the delivery of placenta to prevent PPH?
No, it is like with surgeon, I think.
From labor, it is to be given before delivery of the placenta.
Yes.
Give oxytocin.
Prophylactically, we should give. In high risk patients, it should be given. Okay.
In Gwalior, people have started using carbitocin, and they are getting good results. Few of our gynec obstetrician friends who are having nursing homes, they have started using it. And since its cost is
Okay. Any question? Okay. Thank you, Parag, for launching a new drug and making collaboration of us. And thank you, Godman. Thank you, our dynamic panelists, Foxians. Love you. Good evening. Happy Sunday.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for